there are four great classical civilizations in the Old World, from the East: China, India, Mesopotamia, and Egypt. Of these, it is generally known and acknowledged that the great civilizations of China, Mesopotamia, and Egypt go back beyond 3000 BC, since detailed records are available about their kings and dynasties, the major political events in their ancient history, the wars fought by them, their scientific and cultural achievements, and their contributions to the world, and the chronology of all these historical details is more or less known with reasonable accuracy. All these details are known and acknowledged about classical Indian civilization also in all these matters. But all of it pertains only to the period after 600 BCE or so, of the four great civilizations of the Old World. The civilization of India alone stands apart in the fact that its history before 600 BCE is supposed to be a big blank in all these matters. The great Indian civilization, whose remains were discovered by archaeologists in the early 20th century on the banks of the Indus and the now dried up Sarasvati, and whose beginnings, like those of the other great civilizations, go back well beyond 3000 BCE, is alleged to be a totally different civilization from the later classical one, of a totally different people speaking a totally different language and having a totally different religion and culture. Likewise, as per the linguistic and philological consensus based on the evidence of language, the history of the different dialects of the original Aryan or Indo-European language-speaking people in their unidentified original homeland also goes back to a point of time before 3000 BCE or so. And it was only around that time that they started separating by migrations from each other. But the details of their history in all these matters is likewise one more big blank, including even the exact geography of that original homeland. In short, their descendants, after migrating to different areas, left us detailed historical records of their independent civilizations everywhere, in India, Iran, Central Asia, Anatolia, Iraq, Greece, Rome, Scandinavia, Ireland, South Russia, the Caucasus and Balkan areas, and every corner of medieval Europe. But the history and geography of these original Indo-Europeans themselves, in their original homeland, is supposed to be a total blank, although they lived at a point of time just before 3000 BC when the other great civilizations were leaving us detailed historical records. In other words, we have here supposedly three different cultures or civilizations. 1. The original PIE culture in an unknown original homeland 3000 BCE. 2. The Indus-Sarasvati or Harappan civilization in a known territory prior 3000 BC to 1900 BCE. 3. The Vedic culture in the same known territory 1500 BCE to 600 BCE, leading to the classical Indian Hindu civilization post 600 BCE. Is this scenario supported by the recorded evidence? Historians in history books treat the history of the Proto-Indo-Europeans in their unidentified homeland, the history of the Harappan people in their very well-defined territory, and in spite of the details of names and events in the Rigveda, the history of the Vedic people in their same well-defined territory in the northwestern parts of India, as the eventless histories of mysteriously anonymous, faceless and nameless crowds of people, with no available historical details about their kings and dynasties and the major political events and conflicts in their ancient history. However, the fact is that these three allegedly different people are actually more or less with subtle distinctions one and the same people with a very well-recorded history. As we will see in this article, which with a few small but important additions of details is a summarization of the evidence presented by me in my three books, and particularly the third one published in 2008. The history of the Indo-European migrations from their original homeland is recorded history. These Proto-Indo-Europeans had names, historical personalities, historical kingdoms and historical events recorded in the traditional texts of India. The main question that arises is, why, if this is so, has it never been recognized by the Indologists studying these texts? The answer is that the Indologists were looking through the lenses and blinkers of the Aryan invasion theory, according to which the Aryans are Indo-Aryan or Vedic language-speaking people. Being originally a branch of the Indo-European language-speaking people of South Russia, invaded India somewhere around 1500 BC or so. Settled down in the Saptasindhava region, mainly the Greater Punjab present-day northern Pakistan, and composed the Rigveda. Later they spread out eastwards and, now with their center shifting eastwards to Aryavata or present-day Haryana to UP, composed the Yajurveda and finalized the Samhita, which mainly consists of extracts from the Rigveda. Finally, they spread out as far east as Bengal and composed the Atharvaveda. As they spread out over the rest of northern India, the various other Vedic texts were given their final form. The traditional Indian historical texts, the Puranas and epics, speak of various conglomerates of tribes spread out all over northern India. Mainly the tribal conglomerates of the solar tribes, the Ikshvakus, and the lunar tribes, the Ela, the 5 tribes: Druhyas, Anus, Porus, Yadus, Tovashus, obviously in the Ait paradigm. All these and other tribes mentioned in the Puranas automatically become descendants of the original Aryan invaders who composed the Rigveda, particularly since all of these are found named in the Rigveda also, which also frequently refers to the 5 tribes. The Indian writers who oppose the Ait, whether or not they also espouse the Oit out of India theory, also accept this paradigm about the Vedic people being the progenitors of Indian culture as a whole, and in extreme cases they even insist they are the progenitors of all the cultures of the world. And therefore in their eyes also the different conglomerates of tribes named in the Puranas automatically become descendants of these Vedic Aryans who composed the Rigveda. This Indian obsession with wanting to place the Vedic culture on the highest pedestal only serves to blind them to the facts, data and evidence in the Rigveda, and leaves them helpless to make a convincing case against the Ait. But what they, as much as the protagonists of the Ait, ignore or fail to understand is that the actual facts, data and evidence in the Rigveda show a totally different picture. 1. The mythology of the Rigveda represents the most primitive form of Indo-European mythology, as MacDonnell puts it. For example, the Vedic gods are nearer to the physical phenomena which they represent than the gods of any other Indo-European mythology. 2. The elements of the culture common to the Rigveda. The Mitanni and the Avesta are not pre-Rigvedic, formed during some hypothetical period in Central Asia before the arrival of the Indo-Aryans into India. They are late Rigvedic, they belong to the period of composition of the new books. The Vedic Aryans, the Proto-Mitanni Aryans, and the Proto-Iranians were together when they developed the common culture and vocabulary which is found in the 3 independent sources of data, the Rigveda, the Mitanni records, and the Avesta. 3. All the other Indo-European mythologies, individually, have numerous mythological elements in common with Vedic mythology, but very few with each other, and even these few except those borrowed from each other in ancient but historical times, such as the Greek god Apollo, borrowed by the Romans, are ones which are also found in Vedic mythology. Of the total 19 common Indo-European deities, Vedic has 19, Greek has 9, Avestan has 7, Germanic has 7, Roman has 4, Baltic has 4, Slavic has 3, Celtic has 2, Hittites has 1, Albanian has 1. And in all the deities which are shared by the Avesta, it is clear that the connection is to and through the Rigvedic deity. Not only are Vedic deities the only one to have clear cognates in all the other branches, but in many cases, it is almost impossible to recognize the connections between related mythological entities and events in 2 separate Indo-European mythologies without a comparison of the 2 with the related Vedic versions. Thus, while the mythology and religion of the Rigveda shows 3 distinct levels, an Indo-European level going further back to the roots and shoots, an Indo-Iranian level, and a purely Vedic level in hymns composed in eastern areas, the Avesta basically shows 2 levels, an Indo-Iranian level and a purely Avestan level. But the most significant part of Indo-Iranian religion, and one that has attracted the attention of most scholars examining this heritage, is that while the Rigveda and the Avesta share a close relationship and have a religious and socio-cultural historical heritage in common, there is one peculiar dominant aspect in this relationship. The two traditions, Vedic and Avestan, seem to represent two entities sharing a common tradition, but as rival entities within this common tradition. And echoes of this rivalry persist down to the later forms of these two traditions. What is most significant is that Helmut Humbach, the eminent Avestan scholar, makes the following very pertinent observations. It must be emphasized that the process of polarization of relations between the Ahoras and the Devas is already complete in the Gathas, whereas in the Rigveda, the reverse process of polarization between the Devas and the Asuras, which does not begin before the later parts of the Rigveda, develops as it were before our very eyes, and is not completed until the later Vedic period. Thus, it is not at all likely that the origins of the polarization are to be sought in the prehistorical, the Proto-Aryan period. All these evidences clearly indicates that the Proto-Indo-Europeans are of recorded history and that the Rig Veda is the oldest Indo-European text containing the mythology and religion of three distinct levels: an Indo-European level going further back to the roots and shoots, an Indo-Iranian level, and a purely Vedic level in hymns composed in eastern areas. The Avesta basically shows two levels, an Indo-Iranian level and a purely Avestan level. In other words, the Rig Veda, especially the old books, were composed at the time when the Indo-Europeans were living in their homeland and not after. Since this is the case and that the Rig Veda was composed in India, thus it proves the out of India theory.